March 2025. First item on the agenda, apologies for absence, we're all here. Second item of the agenda, any declarations of interest? Nope. Moving on to the third item of the agenda, estimated revenue budget outturn 24-25, and this will be taken by Paul Parsons. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. The report monitors the revenue, income and expenditure against the budget for the period to the 31st of January. On the basis of the latest information, a year-end operational underspend of 2.5 million, or 0.7% of the annual budget, is forecast on the General Fund services. This represents an increase of 391,000 from the previously reported position. In the main, this reflects additional grant from the Scottish Government to support the 23-24 pay award, which was confirmed by the Scottish Government during late February. It is a one-off funding increase and no related increase to the 25-26 settlement is anticipated. Other than this, the variance reflects the continuation of trends set out in earlier reports. The housing revenue account is forecasting an underspend of 180,000. The reasons for the variances for both General Fund and HRA are set out in the report. The position outlined relates to normal operational budgets only. We also expect to meet 1.3 million of ongoing COVID pressures in the course of the year. These will be covered by grants received by the Council in previous years. The other area of non-operational expenditure is the balance of the pension windfall or investment for future monies. The balance in this provision, which is unused at the year end, will be transferred to reserve. This is the final budgetary monitoring report for the current financial year. A further report on the outturn position will be submitted once the draft accounts for 24-25 have been finalised. The Cabinet is invited to approve the budget adjustments shown and note the current financial position. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Just on your final comment, so when do we see the first draft of the year end? Is that April, Council, or June?
End of June.
End of June. Is that Cabinet or Council?
Audit and Scrutiny and then Council.
Perfect, thank you. So just open that up to any questions? Any questions from Cabinet member? Just on a couple of comments from me, Paul. As you said, this is very much a continuation of the theme that we've seen through the year, so no major surprises. Just like to ask about the pressures on homelessness. Obviously that's a major overspend which we're covering elsewhere within the Council, which is great. Can you give any sort of indication of what that trend is looking like in terms of cost overruns?
For now, it looks like the trend is continuing, although work is being undertaken by the service in relation to all the levers at our disposal to try to manage the situation. It's a reflection of a trend across the country and indeed the whole of the UK, in fact. And it's something that we have taken cognisance of in the 25-26 budget, and the Council's had to absorb the increase in budget for that area. So it is an area that's been kept under close scrutiny as we move forward.
So no major change from our previous assessments on that at this stage? Okay, thank you very much. So if there are no other questions on this paper, are we happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 4, trading under best value, and this will be taken by Barbara. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Under the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003, the Council is required to consider its trading operations and on an annual basis determine those which are regarded as significant. This report reviews the activities for the financial year 24-25. To be classed as a trading operation, the activity has to provide a service external to the Council that is not statutory. In addition, the service has to be provided in a competitive environment and the recharge has to include an element of profit. These tests are listed out in Appendix A. For all activities that are classed as trading operations, further tests of significance require to be undertaken using financial and non-financial criteria, and these are listed in Appendix B. Having considered these conditions, the result of the review is that, in line with last year, the Council has no significant trading operations in the current year. The Cabinet is invited to approve this position for 24-25. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Are there any questions on this paper? But Barbara, I've just got one. We're familiar with this paper from previous years, and it's to do with early learning and the add-on services. Obviously, that is a competitive market. So, how do we get to our assessment of that service?
If we look down to the first page in Appendix A, we've got the second item there is early learning and childcare add-ons. So it is in a competitive environment. We don't charge it more than cost. It is external trading and it is statutory. So it doesn't comply with all the 4 leads to make it to take us to the significant test. Therefore, it kind of stops at that point.
Can I just clarify, the add-on services I don't think are statutory. So this is the beyond 1140 hours?
That's correct.
Yeah, sorry, that's what it says. It's a kind of double negative there, which always catches me out.
Well, finance love a double negative, don't they? So, just to catch everyone out. So basically, it's not big enough to be captured at this stage.
That's right.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara. Any other questions? So, are we happy to agree the recommendations under item number 4? Yeah, we're happy to agree that. Thank you very much. So, moving on to item number 5, debt management for school meals, and this report will be taken by Mary. Mary, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides information on the level of school meal debt across our schools, as well as advising of the one-off funding recently provided by the Scottish Government under the School Meal Debt Fund to support the cancellation of school meal debt. The report seeks approval to write off the balance of debt remaining as at the end of the last school session 2023-24 and to establish a school meal bad debt provision which would be used to cover the costs of any further write-offs at the end of the current and subsequent school years, up to the maximum value of that fund. Paragraphs 4 and 5 of the report provide details of the School Meal Debt Fund bid process and notes that East Renfrewshire received the maximum amount available to us under the grant conditions of just under £54,000. It is noted that this funding must be fully accounted for in financial year 24-25 to recover the costs of any school meal debt write-off, but also effectively compensates the council for debt written off in previous years. As noted in the report, any snapshot of school meal debt values will include some short-term, low-value amounts due to parents or carers not topping up the system on time or, in some cases, choosing to top up accounts after each payday. Given this context, the Department's view is that the most appropriate time to review debt for write-off is at the end of each school session. Hence the recommendation to now write off remaining debt as at the end of last school session. Going forward, an annual review will take place at the end of each school year with any subsequent irrecoverable debt charged against the proposed bad debt provision of £40,000. Based on recent experience, this would likely cover the cost of school meal debt write-offs for at least 2 to 3 years. Whilst the establishment of the bad debt provision will result in a charge against the Department's revenue budget in the current financial year, this can be offset against the unbudgeted grant income received in respect of the write-offs already accounted for in prior years. So effectively no net impact on the overall budget position as reported in the earlier agenda items. Creating this fund would also mean that there would be no impact on future revenue budgets in terms of school meal debt write-off until the £40,000 suggested had been fully utilised, with the Department then bringing a further report to Cabinet as required to seek further approval for any further write-offs. So Cabinet is asked to approve the write-off of remaining debt accrued to the end of school year 23-24, totalling £14,085.19, and to approve the creation of a bad debt provision for school meals of £40,000 and the write-off of irrecoverable school meal debt at the end of each school year up to the total value of that provision. Thank you, and happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you very much, Mary. Councillor Pragnell.
It's merely just a comment supportive of this paper coming to Cabinet. I think it is good that the Scottish Government are now taking note of this and have provided additional funding for this, but I think it's important that we realise in East Renfrewshire that we are one of the first in previous years to actually write off school meal debt, and others followed our lead. So I think it is positive that we now do have this additional funding and COSLA guidance as well. So, and we do realise that we will, when we're looking to write off school debt, we don't want parents getting into debt, but we will support them and be as probably be as sympathetic as possible to the needs of our parents and carers and why they do get into this situation, and quite often it's no fault of their own. So it is positive that we do have this policy in place, and the funding is welcome.
Councillor Anderson.
Well, I just want to echo what Councillor Craigno said, that also I think within the debt management policy we have, and with MARC and everything, that the way we deal with it is really incredibly helpful, I think, for people. I was at an event recently and spoke to Aberlour, who was mentioned in the original paper when we started this, and the impact was evident as to the intervention that we have as part of the overall policy. So very much welcome it, and great to see that the impact, obviously we allowed for it previously, and now there's a positive variance because we got the funding from the Scottish Government, so delighted to see that. Thank you.
I'll just echo those comments as well. We really welcome this paper. As Councillor Pragner said, this is something that was important to this administration a couple of years ago in consultation with Aberlour. We did the right thing now, and I think the Scottish Government's doing the right thing now as well to provide that, while still having proper collection processes and not ignoring them, which is important for best value requirements. So we really welcome this, and it looks a very sensible approach of how to manage this, not just for this year, but for future years as well. So with that, are we all happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Thank you very much. Agreed. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is item number 6, which is UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and Michael will be taking this paper. Thank you, Michael.
Morning, thank you. The purpose of this report is to inform members of the UK Just Prosperity Fund award from the UK Government to the Council and seek approval for the proposed projects to be undertaken in the period 25-26. The UK Government recently made a decision to extend the programme for a 4th year. However, the rate of funding is lower than the amount each authority was given in year 3. For 2025-26, the Council have been awarded just over 1.078 million, and that's for the 3 main interventions of communities in place, supporting local business and people in skills. Members also note within the paper that there is no individual allocation for Multiply programme. However, local authorities in Scotland have the flexibility to include Multiply activity where it's more aligned to the people and skills intervention. So members will also note that the amount or the reduction from year 3 is just over £850,000, so a significant decrease in the funding. Appendix 1 outlines what the programme has achieved in the council area since April 2023. Appendix 2 of the report lists those projects recommended for approval by Cabinet to use the 2025-26 grant allocation, and given the significant decrease in the funding for this period, we are unable to support all projects previously funded under the programme in previous years. Appendix 3 of the report also lists the projects that are recommended not to be continued in 25-26. These projects recommended for approval will continue to support further employability pathways for local residents, support place-based projects to create a coherent approach to building resilient communities, address inequalities and provide improved footfall to our town centres, as well as supporting new and growth businesses within East Renfrewshire. In terms of recommendations, the Cabinet is asked to note the financial allocation to the Council for the programme period 25-26, note the progress of projects funded since the inception of the programme in Appendix 1, approve the projects as outlined in Appendix 2 for 25-26, delegate to the Director of Environment to make adjustments to the proposals depending upon the detailed costs of the projects being confirmed, as well as delegating to the Director of Environment to approve any new project proposals that can be accommodated if any underspends or adjustments arise during the period 25-26. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one comment as your very last line, which prompted a conversation myself and Councillor Devlin was talking about in terms of the delegated authority, and perhaps we can take that offline, but perhaps we should be considering a backup list in advance, because sometimes we're working very fast to amend things, and you do a brilliant job at that, Michael. But it'd be helpful if we can agree backup lists well in advance, so that you're absolutely clear that this has got our prior approval, and that, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thanks, Michael. So I'll open up to questions. Councillor Pragnell?
I've just got two questions. It's on Appendix 2, and it's the Scottish Action for Mental Health. So you've got two programmes listed there at £69,000 and £34,500. Obviously the number of people are different, but how are these programmes different? Is it just the second one, say 6 months programme, or is the first one a year? So what is actually the difference between them?
I can take that. That's okay. Thank you for your question. Yeah. So they are two separate programs. So one program is for people with mental health conditions within the community. So Emily's very much co-located within the community and taking referrals from all agencies. The second program is co-located within the community mental health team within HSEP. So very much dealing with people with severe and enduring mental health issues. We've only been able to secure 6-month funding for that particular programme, and we are in discussions around match funding with NHS at the moment. So we have been able, because of the reductions in budget, we've obviously had to make quite difficult decisions, but that is under discussion around trying to extend that with match funding.
Thank you for that. And it does mention your kind of expected outcomes for both programmes. So it says number of people expected to be registered, 30, number moving into employment, half. So for those who don't move into employment or education opportunities, what do you envisage for those people?
So it'll be very, very much dependent on the client, because obviously it's really, really person-centred, and obviously we're dealing with a very complex caseload as well. So they may not move into a job within the year, for example, so it could be much more long-term intensive support, but they'll be looking at volunteering opportunities to build up their confidence, they'll be looking at work experience, and they'll also be looking at further training and or FE, kind of further education opportunities as well. So it'll be the whole wide range of employability opportunities.
Thank you. And I just have one other question that's probably more for Michael. For the projects that aren't going ahead, we understand that not everything can go ahead with a slight cut to the grant. How did you make the decision not to go ahead with those ones?
Okay, thanks. So all the projects across the interventions were undertaking a desktop assessment by the Econ Dev team. So that looked at the viability, eligibility, fit, cohesion with the project, but also primarily looking at past performance. So those that were actually chosen not to be recommended for continuation didn't actually meet that criteria in terms of that desktop assessment. We are actually in discussions with some of them in terms of how they could allocate other funding, particularly around the communities in place. We have the place-based investment programme allocation coming up for that as well.
Councillor Anderson.
Well, that kind of leads on to what I was going to ask about. It's obviously particularly concerned about young people and the alternatives, Michael, and you mentioned there that you're talking to them and about other sources. So there's a possibility that it's just the impact, like, you know, assisting young people in particular into employment and, you know, the FE sector. And just want to know that there are alternatives or other ways that these things will still be supported.
Thank you. Yeah, so thankfully I have my colleague Emma, who's going to speak about the next agenda item, which is No One Left Behind. So in terms of the employability landscape, we've got two significant pots of money to actually help deliver activity within East Renfrewshire. So we have the UK Prosperity Fund, which also had that decrease, but we've also got the No One Left Behind. So part of the local employability partnership group take a look at the employability landscape in terms of look at provision across the area. So the LEP, both myself and Emma are very confident that there are no real gaps within the employability landscape in terms of that provision for young people and, you know, for the all age provision as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Very reassuring.
Councillor Devlin.
Just a question on one of the delegated projects. I think it was £1,000 or £2,000 to put hanging baskets up in the central reservations in Barrhead, which I welcome. But if you look at the central reservations, some of them are falling apart. I mean, basically the bricks are lining the middle of the road. I mean, I'd rather see money being spent repairing and bringing it up to a certain standard than putting daffodils or hanging baskets, whatever, in it. So it'd be great if somebody could look at that.
Yeah.
That was a project that was done 15 years ago. I think it was regeneration money then, but it needs repaired big time.
Yeah, so part of the allocation from the place-based investment programme, we'll be looking at the town centre, so that's something we'll definitely address.
Good.
Thanks.
Very good. Just a final question for me, Michael, and the replacement of the Shared Prosperity Fund. I haven't heard any commentary that it was mentioned yesterday in the spring statement. Have you any update on that?
So myself and Emma sit on quite a lot of sort of national groups in terms of employability regeneration, and there has been no solid information coming from the government in terms of what comes next. So I think that's obviously been addressed via COSLA and the various national portfolio groups as well.
So we're still waiting for an announcement on that. Okay, thanks for confirming that. So are we happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Agreed. Thank you very much, Michael. Moving on to item number 7, No One Left Behind, and this will be taken by Emma. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform Cabinet of the No One Left Behind grant award from the Scottish Government to East Renfrewshire Council and seek approval for the annual investment plan in 25-26, as well as highlight any challenges and associated risks. No One Left Behind, or NOLB, is a partnership approach between Scottish Government and local authorities to transform employment support in Scotland. It supports the implementation of local and national employability policy, making best use of resources available to enable the delivery of a wide range of employability services to all age client groups, with a focus on those who have particular barriers to employment. The 25-26 provisional allocation is split across 3 programmes, so all age employability support, which is 16 to 69 years old, tackling child poverty, which focuses on parental employability support, and for the first time we've got specialist employability support, which is aimed at people with long-term health conditions or disabled adults. The amounts are outlined within the paper, just over £1 million for that. Appendix 1 of the report outlines achievements to date for these projects, funded between 2023 and 2025. Appendix 2 of the report outlines the projects that we're seeking approval for in 25-26. And Annex 3 also includes some case studies, just in terms of that person-centred approach. It is recommended that the Cabinet note the progress of projects funded between 2023 and 25 in Appendix 1, approve the projects outlined in Appendix 2 for 25-26 based on the Council's provisional allocation from Scottish Government, delegate the Director of Environment to make adjustments to proposals depending upon detailed costs of projects being confirmed, and delegate to the Director of Environment to approve any new proposal requests that can be accommodated if any underspends or adjustments arrive in the future for 25-26. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Emma. Any questions on this report? Councillor Pragnall.
It's just to say it's great to have the case studies and included in the report, and it really brings to life actually what these funds do. I know certainly, Emma, you'll be aware that I was supporting a constituent who had been on one of these programmes, and he said to me it was transformational for his confidence, and now he has been able to secure employment. It was in collaboration with the education department as well, so it does. These things do matter and they do work, and it does build up people's confidence and their skills. So I hope it continues to be as successful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pragnall. Any other questions? Councillor Anderson.
I noted that there's a letter of comfort that's came in as to the securing like the funding is going to be delivered, and I noted as well that the implications of the proposal, it says that there's a significant increase in reporting for you. Is there any concerns that the funding won't be forthcoming, because it does highlight, the impact potentially, and as Councillor Panko's talking about there, the good things that happen. Any worries or concerns is there any further news on that?
I'd say the concerns come from not having that official offer of grant. This happens every single year, unfortunately, particularly with No One Left Behind. So the Scottish Government have, been able to then issue forms of offer a grant to local authorities, but it's an ongoing concern in terms of getting that official go-ahead from the government in terms of that offer a grant. So that's something, ourselves and 31 other local authorities need to deal with on an annual basis. But I think we have had discussions at our level in terms of, you know, passing that information back to the Scottish Government to say, to allow local authorities to actually secure contracts for employment, but also for delivery of activity. There needs to be that, you know, improved timescale coming from there. In terms of the increased reporting, yes, I think there's probably 140 odd data information we're required to submit on a quarterly basis to the Scottish Government. So the reporting, you know, is becoming a bit more onerous on local authorities to actually provide to the Scottish Government.
Okay, well, yeah, just I'm concerned about obviously the planning that has to go in as to, and yeah, it's an unknown. Time-wise, have you got a time frame for how soon, like, what typically happens, Michael?
I was actually at a meeting for the Local Employability Chair Network yesterday, and the word was imminent.
Okay. Sounds promising, hopefully. All right, thank you, Michael.
I think this was one of the issues we took up with one of the ministers at a recent meeting in terms of the impact on the delays of this funding. I'm not sure there's going to be a quick answer to that, frankly, but we have flagged the concerns about this and the impact it can have on the programme. Any other questions on this? Emma, I've got one question, and it's to do with traineeships and its council departments. So in terms of, it seemed quite a large amount of money for relatively small number of participants. So I wonder if you could, you know, explain the value for money behind that project.
Sure, I think we've quite a conservative estimate of about 10 clients, because it was based on a 9-month placements for the fund. Is that the funded work placement programme? Yeah.
Traineeship for parent.
Oh, the parental ones, yeah. So the parental traineeship, so they're based on either 6 months or 9 months, depending when we get the recruitment, because obviously it takes quite a while to get recruitment on board and do the induction as well. So it is based on that kind of 6-9 month salary costs for that particular client. But what we have found with particularly the PES traineeships last year, we started off with 13 parents taking up the traineeships. That then went down to 9, just people's circumstances, you know, once they got into employment. But with that support and in partnership with our education colleagues as well, it was a real model partnership working. 3 have now been extended and have gone into full-time employment. Several actually undertaken interviews today or yesterday and the day before in order to try and secure employment as well. So we're looking at a really good conversion rate of probably about 80% for those traineeships. So we know it looks like a lot of money up front, but the impact and the outcomes for that are you know, incredible in terms of getting parents back into the workplace. And it won't just be parents, we're actually doing an all age, all stage funded work placement programme next year, because we have young people who lack work experience, who could really benefit from the traineeships as well. And that model, that kind of mentorship, plus the dedicated employability support alongside it, the partnership working really does kind of you know, support that progression into employment.
And basically the grant money is coming to the council to fund these positions.
Yes, that's correct.
And then hopefully at the end of the position there's a path into permanent employability.
That's our goal. Our ambition is to get them into secure.
And we've done that before, and we're confident that that's a good programme.
Absolutely, the conversion rate is very successful. But again, it's about that partnership working and ensuring that progression pathways are in place very early on. So whenever the trainees they're due to finish up at the end of March. Those discussions have been going on from December, January. We've been running workshops. You know, that goes on quite early on, just to ensure that there is that progression.
Very helpful and very helpful explanation. Thank you very much, Emma. Any other questions? Are we happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Agreed? Agreed. Moving on to the final item on the agenda, which is item number 8, Road Service Additional Capital Works Programme 25-26, and this will be taken by Tommy McCauley. Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you, Chair. Between 2019 and 2024, the road service received an additional £15 million in capital to improve the road condition throughout the authority. This enabled 172 areas of carriageway and 57 sections of footway to be resurfaced over those 5 years. In 2024, the Council committed a further £17.5 million over 5 years to continue that work, and in particular to target Category C class and residential roads to improve the Council's road condition indicator. Appendix B highlights the roads and footway schemes that have been chosen for approval and inclusion in this year's programme of works. The schemes are chosen on a number of criteria, including the structural condition of the road or footway, the usage of the road or footway, the cost of maintenance over the previous 3 years, number of complaints and service requests we receive, and geographical spread. 15 footway and 45 carriageway schemes can be undertaken in 2025-26 through the additional funding and will be delivered by a combination of our in-house roads contracting unit and external contractors. A further 13 carriageway schemes will be undertaken on our main arterial routes, which were approved as part of the recent budget setting process. In February 2023, the Council committed an additional £4.3 million to upgrade our street lighting infrastructure. Since then, we have installed 306 new lighting columns, 11 kilometres of underground supply cable, and are at 99.8% LED in our lighting inventory. Appendix A highlights the projects that have been chosen for approval and inclusion in this year's programme of works for the lighting. Work will begin in April, subject to approval of this report. Cabinet is asked to note the content of this report and to approve the street lighting and road resurfacing programme for 2025-26 as funded through the additional capital budget allocation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tommy. Any questions who would like to come in? Councillor Anderson.
It's with regards to the impact of the lighting in particular. Very glad to see that it's coming to an end pretty much, and it's the very last sort of difficult areas I think that you're concentrating on. Well, is it possible to quantify? I believe the council has saved a significant amount of money in terms of utilities, and have we got a figure for that in terms of how much we've saved because of the different lighting, less power? Is it possible to quantify it?
Yeah, yes, we do have information regarding the savings. I don't have them to hand, unfortunately, but I could certainly get them to you. That's been clear not just on cost that we pay out to the utility company, but also there's a carbon saving involved with the production, and that all forms part of that report, but I could certainly provide that to you.
Yeah, it'd be excellent to see that. Second question in regards to this, I have had some residents come back to me about placement of the new and the quality of light as it goes with it, and some people are concerned that they don't have the same. It's a safety thing, possibly at night time in particular. I notice it's happening in the summer months. Do you go back at night time when they're actually on and to check, that the coverage is what you'd expect it to be?
As all our new schemes, we try to replicate as much as we can to reduce disruption within the street, because they've historically been in that location. We try to keep them there, but the technology for LED systems has advanced so much in the last 10 to 15 years that rather than having a narrow light curtain, it's now spreading wider, and those are the kind of units we're using now. When we originally started this process back in about 2012, when we installed our first LEDs, the first generation LED lights are kind of coming to the end of their life, and they've been superseded, and the technology's just advanced so much in that period.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm familiar with those sort of questions on LED lights, but you do get used to them. It's moving from yellow to white light. It's people do get used to it. Paul would like to come back in on your question on costs.
Thank you, Chair. In answer to Councillor Anderson's question regarding the costs, this year there is a cost saving on street lighting and electricity of 270,000. Now that will relate both to consumption and to the new technology, but overall it's a significant saving.
Excellent, thanks Paul, that's great to hear.
That is excellent news. Just to follow on the LED lights, obviously as Councillor Anderson said, we're nearly complete, so what further improvements or initiatives are we looking at after this milestone's been completed?
So, as I'd mentioned earlier, the first generation LEDs are coming towards the end of their lifespan. So, the outstanding 0.2% we have are unique LED lightings, flood lighting, for instance, and that's really been the hold up for us. We're confident we'll have it completed by the end of the summer, but we may get held up with procurement. And it's not so much the procurement route, it's more the sourcing. The designs, the designs have been put in place and they're ready and the orders have been placed. The first generation LEDs are coming at the end of their life, as I say, so our aim is to start replacing those with the newer units, and we'll see. The first generation units weren't as energy as efficient either, so we'll see further reductions, not as significant as they have been in the last few years, but we will see further reductions.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Most welcome. Councillor Pragnell.
Thank you. When the lists go live for the resurfacing, although it need to be approved today, it does cause much discussion in the community, and certainly at a community council I was at last week, they were pleased to see a lot in their area included. I've just got one question about Drumby Crescent and Clarkson, so it's the health centre to Eastwood Means Road. Obviously, I believe there was something in the contingency that any work, any bits of the road that were damaged due to the creation of the new care home and also the assisted living would be funded by the developer. So is that still the case, or is this just in addition to that?
I wasn't aware of that. This would have been an addition for the resurfacing, but I could certainly find out more details regarding the developer, if that's okay.
Thank you. It was just many members of the public who live on the street were under the impression that the resurfacing would be covered under the funds provided in it as a condition of the planning. But if you could find that out, that would be great.
Any other questions? I've got a couple, Tommy. Obviously the report's really welcome and pretty popular with the residents. What measures do we take to make sure that there's minimal disruption for residents? There's an awful lot going on at the roads, not all ours. There's a lot of utility works going on at the moment throughout East Renfrewshire, so I wonder if you could give us some assurances as how we communicate with residents on this.
So there is a lot of disruption on the road network. Network Rail's working, we've got the Oz Road project, and we've got numerous utility works going on. Every piece of work that's carried out on the road is logged and registered in the Scottish Roadworks Register. All our resurfacing works we do 3 months in advance, and this is kind of twofold. It's one, to send an alert to the utility companies, we're going to resurface this, here's your opportunity to get in before we kick off. The second part is so we can put a restriction on that road, so we gave them the opportunity. If they don't get in then, they're not getting in for another 3 years. Now that's getting revised and possibly extended to 7 years. It's still sitting with the Commissioner at the minute. So we carry out that, but we also speak with our East Rens comms team and we publicise through there, and any that require a traffic order gets advertised. We put out advance notice boards a couple of weeks, usually 2 weeks prior to the work starting, and we issue letters to every resident that's affected to the works. That also includes sometimes surrounding streets, which causes its own problems. Why you're not doing our bit type thing, but yeah. So we communicate as effectively as we can with everybody that's involved. And with the Scottish Roadworks Register, when utility companies come in before we start the works, that also causes some disruption, because we get the story, oh, Scottish Water were in here last week, Scottish Gas are in this week, and then you're coming in. But the reason for that is how we coordinate the works so that we don't get any disruption for a number of years thereafter.
Tommy, that is really helpful. I wasn't aware of the complexity of that, but I noticed that Graham's here. I think it'd be helpful for us to have some sort of communication to residents on that, because it is a classic complaint about the amount of roadworks, but actually there is coordination around it, and there is a period when technically people shouldn't be digging up the roads again. I think that'd be very helpful for members at least to then help explain. Councillor Devlin.
Question. Tommy, the main routes, I'll give you an example, say the main street in Barhead, when it's getting resurfaced, you close one side and the other side's opened, right? You come down and put traffic lights on it and they disappear, right? Should these routes at peak times not be monitored? Because I think it was about 3 months ago, the main street, when they resurfaced part of it, or repaired part of it, it was away back to Darnley, the queue of traffic, because the traffic wasn't getting monitored. You just come in and put the lights on and leave them.
We do. We when it's utility companies like that, we put conditions on them that they have to manually control them. If they don't meet the conditions, then we can issue fixed penalty notices to them, which we do through the Scottish Road Works Register, and that's fully supported with the Commissioner.
Right.
So we do that for our own works. We'll manually control. Everyone's unique to the location.
Yeah.
So sometimes, for Main Street, for instance, where we've got high volumes in traffic, and if it's safe to do so, we'll remove everything for peak times and come back on. It can slow up the works, but ultimately it keeps people flowing. Yeah, and that is something we're looking at, particularly for Barrhead Main Street.
It's not just Barrhead Main Street. I think the question I'm asking, can we make sure that the lights at peak times are monitored?
Yes, certainly. Certainly.
It's fine.
No problem.
Any other questions? I've got a couple of final questions. You mentioned about communicating with residents. I think previously we've given a list, a quarterly in advance of those roads that are going to be impacted or are going to be resurfaced. Is that still the plan?
It is. We're also developed the link to the dashboard, which was available to the elected members last year, and we've developed it in a way that a snapshot will be taken at it, and that will be put out to the public as well, so that they can see. It won't show what's coming next, but it will show the historic work that's been done since 2019, since the inception of the additional fund.
That's excellent, because that dashboard was really eye-opening in terms of the amount of work that has been going on over the last number of years, which is good to see. I'm going to link in potholes, right? Because classically, you know, when we talk about roads, right, but people will always complain about potholes, and there's can be a lot of misinformation about what's going on with potholes. So in terms of the capital funding that we've invested to date, or the additional capital funding, any indication of how that has impacted pothole maintenance on an ongoing basis?
It has. We carried out a wee exercise the other day there, and since 2019, the reports of potholes fell 57%, which is very significant. We'll never eliminate them, but their very nature in the climate we have, we've got freeze-thaw cycles, utilities working on the roads, cracks, the water gets in, it expands, hydraulic impact on top of it. They do form pretty quickly. Our roads contracting unit are reactive, they're quick to attend, our attendance rates are up there with the best in the country. So, but yeah, we have seen a marked improvement with this, and also alongside our risk-based inspection, where we prioritise and categorise a lot clearer than the way we've previously done.
Great, Tommy, and I know previously we did some communication on potholes, distinct again because there is so much misinformation on that. So if that could be refreshed as part of the communication programme, that would be helpful. Councillor Anderson.
Very quick final question. I'm aware of that it's not potholes, but it's related, and it's where there's manhole covers in the road. And I asked the question, I was down at the depot, but they didn't seem to know. Someone appears to be, they can be the worst, where but someone's raising them and fixing them. Do you have any idea if it's a particular utility company that's, because they make a huge difference to the quality, you know, driving up Mearns Road or wherever, instead of, people tend to know where they are and avoid them. But someone's raising them and making the roads surface. So I'm glad they're sorting it, but I'd like some clarity on who's doing it.
The likelihood will be with the utility company, although we do have some drainage assets on the road network. These would be picked up where a routine inspection, and if it's a utility company, we'll issue a failure notice through the Scottish Road Works. It's a defective apparatus notice we put through. We don't get a penalty for that, unfortunately, but unless it's high risk. If it is high risk, we issue a 2-hour response to the utility. If they don't respond, then our RCU will respond, not to do the whole works, but to make it safe. Now that could be a number of things, barriers, cones, but 9 times out of 10 we carry out the works and we recharge that if we have to. But with ironwork, when we resurface the roads, we'll replace every bit of ironwork on the road. It's the old adage, why spend £60,000 on a road and leave the old rusty gully gratings and manholes. So we've got a partnership with the utility companies where they supply us with manholes and certain fire hydrants, for instance, and Toby covers the small ones. So we'll replace all them when we go in as just part of our project.
It's great to hear. Thanks, Tommy. I'm glad to see proactive work, you know, before it actually gets to the point where people start reporting it to you. So glad to see. Thank you.
Any other questions? So Tommy, thank you very much for this report. Always welcome to see this report. So with that, are we happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Agreed. Thank you very much. And that brings to an end our Cabinet meeting for today. Thank you very much.